Happy Sunday! We are here for day 3, the last day. Give it up for yourself for making it in this morning on a Sunday. Sex in the morning. Wine last night. Chocolate every day. Did y'all enjoy yourself last night? Let's give it up for Taylor Alexander for curating such an amazing and dope space. Who went to Sex, Wine, and Chocolate last night? Y'all was in the building. You were very cute. And plus, I haven't talked to you all weekend. What is your name?
Allie.
Hey, Allie. What was your favorite part about last night?
I think the burlesque performance. Yeah, that was perfect.
Yes, that was one of my, I was very inspired. You know, I'm an entertainer here a few days a week at night, and how she was pulling off that scarf. Y'all saw that? I mean, the little, what was it? A glove. I'm tired. Okay. Where she was pulling off that glove. You saw it. Do it with me, baby. You saw it. I said, I gotta do that. And then she left the glove over there with us. She threw it. I was like, oh my God, I have a gift. And you know, she came over there at the end of the night and took her glove back. And I was actually a little upset and offended. And I was like, you know, I'm going to practice this with this glove. And she took it away. But here we are. Who else went to Sex, Wine? The name is, I butchered the name a few times. You were on, last night I said, I'm gonna find the person who did my favorite dance. Talk to us about last night. How did you enjoy yourself? Because I enjoyed you, baby.
It was my birthday. I enjoyed it.
Happy birthday! When is your actual birthday?
Thursday.
It's Thursday. Last Thursday, I love this for you. It's important to have a birthday. It means that you're alive. It means that you're well and that you're still supposed to be doing something to meet somebody that gives you what you need in order to do the mission you was brought here to do. So thank you for being here. Happy birthday. Let me tell you, you know, we had the bubbles and Taylor had everybody up doing a dance. Carter. Y'all saw Carter last night? I don't know if they can hear me in there, but that baby played with every person on the stage. I mean, gave us all kind of things. I'm not gonna do in these heels this morning, not as sturdy as the ones yesterday, but Carter ate it up. But you, baby, you gave us a dance of a lifetime, and I'm gonna teach it this morning. You gonna help me? You gonna help me teach your dance? Because last night was just incredible. We don't have any bubbles this morning, but just imagine a whole bunch of bubbles. And I called it the pop the bubble dance. Everybody say pop the bubble. Say pop the bubble. Pop the bubble. You want to blow us some bubbles? Come up here. Oh, sorry. Come up here. Blow us some bubbles. DJ, drop us a beat one time. We're gonna do the bubble dance, the pop the bubble dance. That was really, it was so creative. You ready?
Turn around, fuck it all the way up. Bust it down, turn around. Look, let's get it straight, girl. You don't need a nigga for nothing. Looking better every day. You got that Benjamin Button. Claiming he don't got a girl. You know niggas be frontin'. You don't need no bitch coming up to you as a woman. Ayy, and you a boss, so you hate when niggas waste time. You too pretty to be paused on the FaceTime.
Y'all, that's a pop the bubble dance. Sam ate that. I was like, that was creative. TikTok viral. I mean, who does it the best? Now I've lost my phone. I've put it down. Perfect. Here we are. I know early in the morning we woke you up. Please, so make sure you grab some bubbles. Today is going to be a fantastic day. I'm really excited about the next panel that we're going to get into. But after this panel, we are going to have a break, have lunch, and then get into our keynote speaker of the day, which I'm so excited about. Angelica Ross is coming. Candy from Pose will be in the motherfucking building. I hope you all are able to stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we're going to get into some really dope people to talk about. And so goes the South. You know, again, everything happens and starts in the South. And baby, all roads lead to Atlanta. And so we're going to talk about how our worlds are interconnected and also plagued by injustices. We're going to talk about how the South shapes global narratives and perspectives, and really is the start of many cultural revolutions that we are blessed to be a part of and witness in this lifetime. Our moderator today, I'm not going to put her on the spot, but we have a new moderator today, which I'm really excited about. But the other moderator I was also really excited about. But it's okay, because this moderator is a storyteller and story collector. If you have been out there to this bus, who've been out to the bus? Oh, wow. You didn't tell me they ain't been out there. That means y'all got to get out there today to the bus. You've gone to the bus to share your story? You have already. Tell us about your bus storytelling experience. The bus, you go to the bus and you tell stories. And it's pretty fucking fantastic.
It was a beautiful experience. I felt very safe and welcomed, and what Ashby and Dartrice are doing is really amazing and cool. And I can't wait to see the bus on the road, collecting stories everywhere.
Yeah. Well, this person is a queer Black Southern organizer, again, a storyteller, memory worker, and cultural worker. She is the co-founder of Georgia Dusk, a Southern liberation oral history, and member of Black Alliance for Peace. Please give it together for our next moderator, who's going to introduce our panelists and give y'all a really juicy conversation this morning, Dartricia Rollins. They're all right.
Hey, yo, there I go again, kicking some down.
Am I on? Can y'all hear me? All right, good morning, y'all. Well, this was a decision that was made last night, so I'm a little nervous, but excited to be here with you. I'm going to read some prepared remarks that I have to kind of ground us before I bring our panelists up, and then we'll get into the conversation. That's all right with y'all? All right. So in 1935, when W.B. Du Bois published Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880, and remarked as, quote, "As the South goes, so goes the nation," he's applying an analysis of political economy, here in the U.S. in particular, the consolidation of capitalist power being wielded in the South, in collaboration with the so-called liberal U.S. North, grounded on the exploitation and repression of Black folks in the South at the hands of former slavers and landowners. Du Bois states that, quote, "It is significant that the very center of Northern capitalist power, which protected and butters the new monopoly of big business, turned and with the same gesture freed land and capital in the South from any fear of control by Black and white labor," end quote. To get me closer to my point, if we understand that the nation, this imperialist nation, the government of the United States, is controlled by big business and monopoly capitalism, then we have to understand that the foreign policy, AKA imperialist hegemony of the US, which dominates the world with a hyper-focus on the exploitation of the resources and manipulation of the global South through neocolonialism, then we have to take the question of the conditions of the global South seriously. We have to start from a place of understanding the repression that those of us feel in the US, South in particular, is connected to the exploitation, repression, militarism, and neocolonial rule of the Global South. Yes, there is a lot that we can learn from the movements for political power and abstract liberation in the Global South. But we, those of us in the belly of the imperialist beast, have to ask ourselves what is required from us to end U.S. imperialism globally and here at home to ensure that we achieve Black, queer, and trans liberation, and more generally, the liberation of the poor and working class. How must we expand to an internationalist solidarity with places like the Sahel in Africa that has formed an alliance with Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso to take back control of their people's economic, political, and social desires? How do we understand the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, as a militaristic occupation force consolidated in the Horn of Africa and expanded throughout the continent is the same as the militaristic occupying force called the police, ICE, and other law enforcement agencies that terrorize our communities? How do we understand that we are Palestine, and the movement to end the occupation of Palestine is a worthy fight, not just for the liberation of Palestine, but the liberation of all of us? How do we understand that there is no Black, queer, trans liberation without economic, political, and social power, free from U.S. imperialism in the Global South? And so with that, I will introduce the purpose of this panel. In a world increasingly interconnected yet plagued by injustices, this panel explores the pivotal role of the Global South in shaping global narratives, policies, and movements. From cultural revolutions to economic innovations, the Global South stands at the forefront of transformation. Activists, organizers convene to dissect the impact of Southern perspectives on global trends and across movements. And with that, I will introduce our wonderful panelists. M. Adams is a community organizer and the movement infrastructure and executive with the Movement for Black Lives. Born and raised in Milwaukee in a community frequently targeted by police, economic exploitation, gender-based violence, and other forms of violence, Adams knows the impact of such violence all too well. Being a survivor compels Adams' work as a prison abolitionist and a radical Black, queer, gender nonconforming feminist organizer. These commitments also fuel her to build her own family, as she is a proud dad and hubby, and she sees her family as the primary motivator for her work. As a queer Black person and a movement scientist, Adams thinks critically about power, oppression, and movement building, and regularly applies and tests her intersectional approach in diverse arenas. Adams has been a leader in Wisconsin, WI politics, as the co-executive emeritus of Freedom, Inc. and the Take Black the Land movement. Additionally, she has presented before the United Nations for the Convention on Eliminating Racial Discrimination. She's a co-author of the book Forward from Ferguson and a paper on Black community control over the police in the Wisconsin Law Review. Adams can regularly be seen in person on local and national TV and in the newspapers giving presentations, testifying at city council meetings, and energizing crowds at protests. She can also be seen at local dog parks with her pack. Welcome, M. Adams. All right. Starseed Eva, also our DJ throughout the weekend, believes in a freer, greener future and is on a journey alongside their world-expanding friends to get there. The apple of their eye is the city of Atlanta, where they live, work, play, and experiment with the people in the city about how we might practice a more compassionate way of being together. Much of their organizing in the city is concentrated within the Ashview Heights, Vine City, West End, Bush Mountain, and now Gresham Park neighborhoods, where their abolitionist ideology comes to life by way of child care collectives, neighborhood farmers markets, community gardens, popular education campaigns, and earth-based projects. When they're not organizing against Gilly, the carceral infrastructure of Atlanta, or the city's lecherous leadership, they're probably riding their bike or stealing flowers from a gentrifier's garden. When Eva is not in Atlanta, they are spending the time nurturing their communities across the Caribbean and Southeast Asia, using their network building skills to build hyper-local global networks of care they believe will help us prepare and adapt to global climate collapse. Please welcome Eva. And lastly, I'll introduce my comrade, Salome Ayawak. As an organizer, researcher, and educator, Salome's focus is on building with Africans on the continent and in the diaspora toward a liberated future where they have full control of their resources and themselves. Please welcome Salome. So there's a mic in that chair and one here. All right, so to get us started, could you all say a little bit more about yourselves, the work that you do, and your interpretation of today's panel, So Goes the Global South, Goes the World?
Hey y'all, good morning. My name is Eva. Y'all just heard the bio. Before I start, I did want to say that I've mentioned several times throughout the weekend, I'm currently fundraising for a young person in Gaza. Her name is Maram. She was a medical student at the outbreak of the escalation of the genocide. And through the onslaught, the siege, and the horrors, Maram has been using the skills that she has as a medical student to help keep people alive, has been working out of tents, has been helping some more senior doctors perform surgeries without clean equipment and all other things. And all Maram wants to do is to flee and continue her education so that she can offer her skills to the world. So if you are interested in helping Maram's campaign, please, you can scan that QR code over by the DJ booth, or you can Venmo me. It's just at dimebag with 2 G's, because I'm a motherfucking G. But yeah, Maram hasn't reached half of her campaign. And like, if we can't organize to stop empire, the least we can do is redistribute the resources we've stolen from the global south. So find me or go over there and donate. If you scan the QR, it is in Swedish kroner. So if you put 20 Swedish kroner, you are only donating $1 USD. Please do the conversion. Thank you. But my work, yeah, I feel like in the past year and some months, my understanding of the world and my role in it has changed. And like, very succinctly, I feel like my work and my role right now is to help us getting closer to collapsing empire. And I think that works in a lot of different ways. But for me right now, it looks like pushing people away from the fetish of electoralism towards understanding the necessity of direct conflict with the state. And so much of that is owed to the movement Tent City ATL, where we couldn't get Keisha Bottoms to deliver a community benefits agreement. So there was an encampment outside of Turner Field in the Summerhill neighborhood for many months. And it expanded through 2020 when so many young people took to the streets and took their fervor and their anger and their energy and decided to fight back directly against the state. And of course, all of that transitioned into the movement to stop Cop City, which we are all familiar with. Yes, we don't have to do the spiel. Kate and Mary came up here yesterday. And so, yeah, I've done a lot of stuff related to agriculture, a lot of stuff related to education, but the thing that's holding my heart right now is realizing, like, we don't have 30 minutes, as Salome said. Like, our planet is in jeopardy, and if we do not stop the empire will stop all of us.
Thank you. Salome? Yes, tell us more about your work and your interpretation of today's panel, So Goes the Global South, Goes the World.
My current role, my current job is with the Movement for Black Lives, which is a national ecosystem of over 150 Black-led organizations who are all held together by some core ideologies. One of them is abolition, which means we are for the destruction and the dismantling of any system that is harmful to Black people. So that certainly includes prisons, jails, police, ICE, but we think of it more comprehensively than that. So any system that is harmful and hurtful to Black people in the planet. Secondly, we are Black queer feminists, which means we think critically about race, yes, but just as critically about gender, sexual orientation, documentation status, incarceration experience, et cetera, and that all aspects of those identities, all aspects of those experiences shape who we are. We need a critical analysis around it in order to build a movement that works for all of us. And last but not least, we are anti-capitalist. So we are people who believe that the function of the economy should be to serve people and the planet, and not to be a profit center for a few. So we're 150 organizations who are joined together to do that. I'm very honored and thankful that I get to be in the role of a co-executive director inside of that project. A lot of what I focus on right now is infrastructure. So that means I spend a lot of time thinking about how do we arrange systems and structures with our people and resources to have our work happen most effectively and as impactful at the scale needed as possible. What brought me to that area of work is because I am or have been a local organizer for many years. So let me say this, I am not from the South. Don't you tell nobody that M was up there acting like M was from the South. No, I was not. WI in my bio, I'm from Wisconsin, born and raised. It's where I did my organizing work for many years. But in my training, I was always trained with a Pan-Africanist thinking. So I was always trained to think about Black people across every border. So to think about the conditions happening to me as being connected and tied to the conditions of Black people happening in a variety of places. So for me, what brought me into my work in infrastructure is I was thinking about how do we actually build meaningful movements that can connect to a place like Palestine, that can really have impact or have connection in a place like South Africa, et cetera. And so I feel very clear that the conditions of Black people here, and I'm a descendant of Africans enslaved here in the United States, I feel very clear that the liberation of our people is connected to the liberation of Black people and other oppressed and exploited people around the world. And so I think it's an imperative that we have a viewpoint, as my comrade here articulated, that we understand our quest is to stop empire, not simply to try to change our local condition, but to stop the global arrangement of systems that create and produce our global condition, our local conditions.
Thank you.
Thanks y'all for sharing. Is my mic on? Oh. Thanks y'all for sharing. Again, my name's Salome, which means peace, like salam, shalom. And I start with that because my relationship to the Global South starts from when I was born. I was born in the context of Uganda within a UN refugee camp that broke out in war. But the time I was born, there was a relative time of so-called peace, but it's not the type of peace that the Black Alliance for Peace, works towards, which I am part of. It was the type of passive peace in which the gunfires were slowed down for a short period of time, but then would quickly pick up again. And I start with that because my relationship to the Global South is connected to where I'm born. It's connected to the fact that I was born without any country claiming me, neither Uganda nor South Sudan, where my family fled from, claimed me. And then we immigrated to the US, and from there, my relationship in the US was still with other African immigrants, and my organizing started, my formal organizing started in 2014 with the murder of Trayvon Martin. And my goal with that, this was in Idaho, my goal was to really make connections between newly immigrated Africans like myself and my family who were building community together in a very white space, right? And connecting it with the struggles of Black folks who were forced here on the slave trade. And so that journey, that's still the work that I do today. So in undergrad, the work that I was doing was with migrant workers. And then when I studied abroad in South Africa in 2016 during the Fees Must Fall movement, my understanding around campus organizing shifted from just a student-centered thing to a complete undoing of an entire society and an entire world, which necessitated the end of neocolonialism, which is the stage of colonialism in which it seems like we are free, in which we have these flag independence, in which they tell us, oh, apartheid is over, but the conditions tell us otherwise. When folks can't eat, when folks have to pay extreme rates for school, when the education I'm receiving in the classroom while in South Africa looks not very different than the education I received in Salem, Oregon at my university there. It's still very white-centered, very much centered on maintaining this notion of the US as the standard, of those in the so-called global South as those who have no autonomy, who have no ideas around how they want to live their lives. And so from there on, my organizing transitioned within the reproductive health rights justice movement. And a lot of my learnings within that space, I was able to come to a lot of political clarity in the sense that these elections, these politicians, their job is to maintain empire. And if the existence of the United States, the purpose of the United States necessitates war, necessitates the displacement of people like my family members, it necessitates that we flee our homes, right? It necessitates exploitation, it necessitates death, then that means each person going into these elected offices from city council all the way to their career goal, which is presidency, is to maintain that empire. And so for me, I had to remove myself from organizing in the way that sustains the death of my people, and in order to honor my ancestors as well, right? Because they say, oh, vote because your ancestors couldn't vote. Me, I say, my ancestors would not want me to vote for their death. And that is where I stand. And so right now I organized alongside Dartricia with the Black Alliance for Peace and the Black Alliance for Peace Atlanta. And that work includes organizing around getting the US out of Africa. They're not supposed to be there. This is not your place. The US, get out of Africa, you're there to exploit. And the US Out of Africa Network is a network of organizations on the continent who are continuing their liberation struggles, continuing the struggles that we often read about, like the liberation struggles from Guinea-Bissau to Kenya to South Africa to Mozambique to Algeria, right? And so that network is bringing us together in order to actually be real around what we mean around anti-imperialism, right? And like anti-imperialism being, hey, the US is the enemy to African peoples, and also understanding that the way the global economic system was set up, especially following World War II, is in service to maintaining a capitalist system. And so when we start there, we can then take care of everything else. And when I say then, I don't mean later. I mean, when we start at the point of framing our struggle around anti-imperialism, right? Because if I have so-called reproductive rights, but I'm being bombed, what does that mean, right? And so for me, it's really about being able to actually have a clear framework, have clear definitions of what we mean when we say the things, and have clear principles as well, so that we're not recreating the systems that don't work and recreating the tactics and strategies that we know are losing, right? Just so that certain people can maintain their paychecks. And in addition to that, my work also includes working with a collective called Ukombozi Africa to Atlanta. It's a newer collective of folks who are making connections between first and second gen Africans in Atlanta with our people back home, getting clear on our histories, coming together to learn. One of the ways we do that is through film screenings, through deep study, and through just building relationships with each other, with our people. Because what exists now, I don't know if it's sustainable for you, but it's not sustainable for me, and it's not how I want to live, right? And it's not how we should be living. But yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you. All right, so I'm hoping that you all could, to speak to all of these questions, they're for you. But how does the intersection of climate justice, economic justice, and reproductive justice in the global South impact global organizing efforts?
I can start. Hello? Okay, thank you. I can start because I think my answer to this one answers the second half of your first question, which was the interpretation of this panel. I forgot to answer it. We, in the imperial core, have nothing to gain from the collapse of empire, which is why our organizing towards the collapse of empire has been so poor, which is why our organizing for the liberation of Palestine has topped off, has peaked at marches outside of empty buildings, outside of empty consulates, when our elected officials are at home already, when the people inside the consulate are already safely at home. If we do not understand that we will not be leading the charge against empire, we will continue to waste valuable time that we don't have on this planet. Do you know that we have 30 minutes? It's like, we have 2. Again, we literally have 2 minutes left on this panel as people are putting their homework questions in ChatGPT every day. That's what's happening in the imperial core. What's happening in the imperial core is Lady Gaga is giving a concert for Kamala. What's happening in the imperial core is Megan Thee Stallion is giving a concert for Kamala, who's saying we should do fracking still, and is campaigning off of Dick Cheney's legacy. Dick Cheney. And so when we talk about as goes the South, that is actually a call to reorient ourselves to the people who are truly leading the struggle against empire. And they're in the global South. They're in Haiti, resisting another incursion orchestrated by the United States. They're in Sudan, pointing out the linkages between the United States, the UAE, and the Zionist entity, and how they're using it to create humanitarian crisis to access Sudan's rich resources. They're in Palestine with drones and gliders literally tearing down walls. And so we have to stop looking to ourselves, the people who are shouting "Whose streets, our streets" from the sidewalk, to lead any type of incursion against empire, and we need to be following their lead. We need to be following the lead of Kanaki, who has the French Empire in a freaking tizzy. We need to be following the lead of the Sahel, who has resisted so many different assassination attempts. It's not coming from us, y'all. This past year has shown us the extent of what we can do, and it's pretty piss poor. And so when we say as goes the South, it means it's time for us to shut up and look towards them. They have done the writing, they've done the work. They are currently in direct conflict with empire, armed, trained, disciplined, in a way that we will never be.
Can you pass M the mic back? Thank you. Want me to repeat the question?
I got it, thank you. Slightly different interpretation. So I think that, I really situate myself and my organizing lineage and legacy for folks who've been involved in the Black freedom struggle. And I do think there have been important examples of what it means to struggle against empire while here on this land. And the reason why I think that that's important is, the United States is a settler colonial project. And so there are sort of these dual track of realities. There is this track of liberal bourgeois democracy, which we should call out and confront at every time, at every turn, 100% and absolutely. And there is the struggle and the resistance work of folks who've been enslaved here as well as indigenous communities here. And a lot of the models of the organizings that I've studied, that I've been really trained in, have been based in the lineage of folks who've been enslaved here, who've organized, right? Whether it's abolitionist projects and organizing, such as Harriet Tubman, right? Who I think had, if that ain't a struggle against empire, I don't know what is, right? And if I think about the struggles of Black radical organizing against the institution of Jim Crow and other folks, I say that because what I want to point to is organizing against empire gets squelched here in the United States. There were active plans, active organizing by the government through the COINTEL program and other programs to actually kill Black leaders, to incarcerate Black leaders, to jail Black leaders, and even to decimate Black communities, whether it was the introduction of, crack as a way to dismantle community fabric, whether it was the expansion of mass incarceration, the carceral state, the proliferation of cop cities all across the United States in response to the 26 million in the street. So I'm saying that to say I think there is an opportunity for organizing and even a militancy of resisting the empire that I actually think is critical to happen here in the United States. When I organize and engage with folks across borders, what they tell me is make sure you do that at home. Like, yes, help us, but you're in the belly of the beast, weaken the beast. So I see that as a mandate of our work, right? Not to forego the possibility that we can actually have impact here, but to rev it up. So responding to the challenge laid out is actually we do need to rev it up, and I do think we need to challenge neoliberalism in our movement culture that has us choose comfort over challenge, right? That has us think about how do we monetize or get paid for every aspect of our work of labor that we call leftist or social justice organizing. I think those elements are actually backwards and underdevelop our work and need to be uprooted from our work. But I do think that we have a responsibility to disrupt empire here. Part of what I think we need to do and why I think our movement here isn't as strong and is not, I think, propelling or unifying the work across the globe of disenfranchised and exploited people is because we don't have a good analysis of capitalism here. So a lot of our work is focusing on culture, which is really important, right? It's focusing on culture, or it's focusing on, I don't know how deep people are in their Marxism, but it's like focusing on the superstructure. But we actually need to focus, in addition to that, we need to be focused on understanding capitalism as a global system that orders constructs of race, constructs of gender, constructs of sexual orientation, etc. Because what's at the root of all these struggles, I think, is the dismantling of empire that says the nation state controls your reproduction, that has the nation state derive value from trans violence, that has the nation state says Black people are less valuable and so will be an exploited labor force inside of this global market, both in the US and external. And so I think to me, what I think our movement, feminist movements here in the United States, whatever forms of liberation movements in the United States really need to be rooted in a strong anti-capitalist politic. And I think that is actually what unites a global movement against empire. Because colonialism isn't just a cultural manifestation. It's about the extraction of labor, wealth, and land. And that's all a capitalist function. And so having the understanding that colonialism is an expression of capitalism, of global capitalism to create empire, I think is key.
Thank you. I'm going to try to remind myself that I'm not on a panel. I'm moderating the panel. But I mean, in my articulation of Du Bois's Black Reconstruction, the quote that I was pulling from was his articulation of the repression of Black folks in the South in order to stabilize capital. And so my question, which I think y'all have actually built up towards, is what are the connections that we see to the US South and the Global South, and what are the possibilities for our organizing work to happen and to broaden? Because the So Goes the South is not just an understanding that there's just repression that happens here, but there's actual great movement that is happening, as you articulated. And so, yeah, I'm interested in y'all's thoughts around our connections and possibilities south to south.
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what was the
point
question?
blank? Yeah.
What are our possibilities, and what are the connections, the direct connections you see between the US South and the Global South?
Yeah, and I appreciate the framing around Du Bois because similarly, like you said, the exploitation of the success or the building of the North was dependent on the exploitation of the South, which exploitation of people, right, of the masses of people. And similarly, what we see here, this building that we're in, this phone that you have in your hands, this microphone I'm speaking of, it's only made possible through the exploitation of Black African peoples and other folks within the so-called Global South. And it's called, to me, what the Global South means is it's those spaces in the world who the Global North depends on for their livelihood. For everything that they have, they depend on them, on their exploitation. And so in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, Walter Rodney talks about how when it comes before all of this, right? Before colonialism, before the slave trade, in terms of development, Africa was no less developed than the rest of the world. We have trade routes from all across the Sahara, right? From each side of the continent, west to east, east to west, right? And the reason why I say that is because how it then shifts is due to this thing called productive forces. And the reason I say that is because if we're talking about capitalism, we have to talk about our relationships to labor. And as ones, if you're benefiting from a particular, for example, in the Sudan's, iron is major. If your main economy is now dependent on the sale of iron, then the people who are in charge of that, they then have more power in society, right? And so then it shifts what people's different interests are within that society. And so we've seen these shifts happen, and with each stage and with each shift in terms of how the world economic system functions, it's come from a shift in productive forces. And what are the things that make society function, and what are the things that are valued within a particular society? And the reason I say that is because when Eva mentioned that it won't happen here, it doesn't mean we don't do work here. What it means is that we are so comfortable with the exploitation that we'll scroll the Instagram, post that, and that's the end of it. And when it's no longer in the news, when it's no longer on our feed, we're no longer engaging with it. But you know who still has to struggle with it? Those who are being exploited, especially in the Global South. And so when we say that the revolution, like the complete shift, it's gonna take place, in my understanding, in my analysis, on the continent, because folks are fed up. You see folks rising up throughout the continent from Kenya, right? This summer, how many of you, raise your hand, have heard of what was taking place in Kenya during the summertime? So what was taking place, there was a Reject Finance bill in which it was a bill that was introduced. It was introduced in their parliament, and during the time of introduction, there were Congress members from the US there, and this bill would mean extreme taxes on everyday goods. And the taxes, they wanted it to be there so that the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, could benefit and like get paid off of the exploitation of Kenyan workers, right? And the people of Kenya rose up against that, and they stopped it. But that struggle didn't end there. You probably stopped seeing it on your feed, but my comrades are still trying to organize with folks, trying to build a Fees Must Fall in Kenya right now, right? They're still trying to work because imperialism is not done. Here, we'll win one bill, we'll stop one thing and say, oh, the work is done, right? We're done now. We can go take a nap. We can go rest. Rest is not revolutionary, babes. I cannot rest while my siblings are dying. I cannot rest while my people are being exploited. And because we are so comfortable here, right? It's okay for us. We say it's okay, but it's actually not. And where will we stand once the people of the global South rise up and they take back control of their land, of their resources? When folks in the Sahel complete their revolution, what will happen? Where are you gonna get your iPhone from?
All right.
The entire global South, right? And so my point is that it's really important that we stand with those in the global South in struggle, and the policies, everything that's implemented here and over there is connected. For example, when it comes to the deadly exchange program, a lot of the weapons you see on the streets during mass protests, a lot of the military-grade weapons, that comes from the Pentagon. These are the same weapons that they utilize on our people in the global South. And folks, historically, like, our struggles are won when we actually ideate together, and in a way where these people, they understand their struggles. My comrades in Kenya, they understand the struggles in Kenya way more than I could ever, but my job is to provide the resources for them to be able to do that work, and then for me to struggle here with my people to put an end to empire. And that comes with clarity. We can't just start with the guns. We have to start with political clarity, and if we're not on the same page, we're just gonna lose. And I think that's important to think about as well.
Thank you. Eva and then M, and then we'll go to audience questions.
Yeah. First, I want to thank you, M, for uplifting, correctly, that there have been incredible movements against empire, started from the most marginalized here. The one that immediately comes to mind for me always is the MOVE community. How many of you all know about the MOVE community? John Africa, Tracy Africa, all of the political education they were doing, the food programs they were doing, the possibilities they were opening up for the people in Philadelphia. So thank you so much for uplifting that, Em, because I have deep respect for our ancestors. I do also have to hold what I have been able to see when the call was put out from the rest of the world to us to stop the trade of arms, to end the mechanisms for genocide, not just in Palestine, to end the mechanisms for genocide in the Congo, to end the mechanisms for intervention in Venezuela, to end the blockade in Cuba. The material reality is we have not been successful. That is not to say that we should give up and have self-pity. It means that we try something else, that we take an honest stock of what we're doing. What we're doing right now, as all of us on the panel have said right now, and that's not to say that we are not enjoying it too. We are all implicated in empire, but we are all doing a lot of feeling good. And right now, at the end of the world, is about struggle. Struggle doesn't feel good. Our ancestors, bless them and thank them for what they did did not always feel good. They did not have Black joy. They were struggling for our survival. And so while we should not throw our bodies at the machine recklessly and unstrategically, we do have a mandate to answer to. And to answer to your question specifically, Dartricia, there can be no reproductive justice under empire. The doctors that let Amber Thurman and Candy Miller die are the same doctors who have said nothing for over a year of genocide in Gaza, while all of their colleagues were ruthlessly and strategically targeted by the IDF. The doctors who said nothing while the IDF targeted babies in NICU units are the same doctors who will comply with the fascist empire when you tell them that you had a problem with your abortion. There is no reproductive justice under empire. If Black African children in Congo have to mine for minerals from the age of 3, then Black children in Atlanta will still be facing off against APD. If the children of Haiti have to deal with the incursion from soldiers, basically mercenaries, forced to leave their homes in Kenya, then Black children across the US South will never access the correct healthcare, education, protection from bird flu and COVID-19. There is no safety for our children as long as empire stands, anywhere. We will not have access to abortion as long as mothers in Kanaki have to deal with French soldiers on the ground gunning down their children. There will be no codifying of Roe. It will not mean anything as long as US arms are around the world maiming and killing people who look just like us. So actually, maybe it's time to reject comfort and Black joy and new iPhones and vapes and ChatGPT and leaving the shower on for 5 hours and all of the excess and decadence of empire. Maybe it is time to divest from empire. Maybe it is time for a few less conferences so that we can meet with the 5 people on our block and talk about what we're gonna do when APD rolls up next time. Maybe we have to choose where our alliances stand, and it might not feel so good.
Thank you.
Ditto. Ditto. I'll add another texture to it. There is no trans liberation under empire. So the function, empire, part of how it's able to keep going is how it socializes the people in empire. So it sends different ideas to different groups, which is part of this comfort thing, right? So in our movement culture and the dominant culture of the United States is this idea of individualism. I should be able to rest. I should be able to be comfortable. If I don't like this, if this doesn't feel good to me, then I shouldn't have to do it. And while there's some merit in that thinking insofar as it helps people to think about what a visionary world should be, it helps survivors in particular be able to disrupt harmful abuse, violence, trauma in their lives. By and large, it's serving to have us be disconnected from a level of suffering and therefore a level of responsibility to end the suffering. A lot of what I see in organizing right now around the advancement for transgender, nonconforming, and intersex folks is leaning toward that. Is leaning toward how do we make people as comfortable? How do we get people in communities to be more comfortable with us? Though, again, I understand where that comes from because I want an immediate end to not being called a name that doesn't reflect or match me. I want to be able to identify, be recognized as who I say I am in the world. Those things are important, but those things by themselves are not enough, and those things are not fundamentally possible without a stopping of empire. So part of what empire is doing in this socialization of us is it is giving us roles within the reproduction of society. So empire is saying, I need this many workers. I need this many laborers. I need these social relationships to be in place that would allow this exploitation. Because if people really saw value in trans people, Black people, queer folks, women, young people, disabled, etc., if there was deep value socially in those identities, then we would all be like throwing our bodies against the machine. We would all be diametrically opposed to the exploitation of those people. But empire needs those, empire needs us to not have alignment. Empire needs us to not find deep value in those identities. And it goes a step further. Not only does empire say these identities are not valued, but it says society is going to be reproduced at the expense and at the cost of particular gender identities. So empire says we need a bunch of slaves and we need women to make them, right? It says we're going to create a gender category, and the function of that gender category is to raise, to birth, and to provide care to what needs to go into this group of laborers so that society can continue. And Empire also says, but these people have to behave a certain way. And anybody who goes outside of behaving that way will be punished. So when people are gender nonconforming, what you doing? You're not matching up with Empire's idea of what this woman is supposed to be to reproduce society. So you will be punished. If you are transgender, you will be punished. If you are intersex and your body is different than what they think an assigned person at an assigned biological category should be, you will be punished. So perhaps that's a little bit abstract, but what I'm trying to get to is that the violence against trans bodies is not just a cultural issue. It is a requirement, a necessity in the ordering of Empire. Empire says society needs to look a certain way in order to reproduce itself according to the norms we need. And we need reproductive violence as a glue that keeps that together. Because if you don't have control over your body, and I do, then I control society. Right? So reproductive violence is a fulcrum in this machine. Right? If we're thinking about the Black experience, reproductive violence was the fulcrum of chattel enslavement. It wasn't an afterthought. It was the key to how the thing came together. And so there is no trans liberation. Right? Pride alone ain't gonna do it for us. You know, don't get me wrong, I like a good rainbow. Yeah? But it by itself is inconsequential. Unless we're clear about the global capitalist machine, unless we're clear about the role of the United States and the western parts of Europe as an empire that is forcing the exploitation, the violence, the murder, the genocide, the theft. And to the last point of the question is, you mentioned climate. I can't say enough about the way that climate disasters are going to exacerbate the things that we're talking about. This comfort and arrangement of life that exists for people in the United States currently, it won't be like this in 20 years. It's going to accelerate a set of social crises like we've never seen. When parts of the United States where people have to forcibly be moved because something is underwater now, or a hurricane, a tornado. And that also includes our kinfolk in other parts of the world, right? I think a lot about the Caribbean and what's going to happen over the next set of decades.
One small comment, because we're at time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I also want to emphasize again, for my family in South Sudan, it's not in 20 years, it's right now. Several folks over the last year have died due to extreme heat because of deforestation, and also have died from starvation due to the fact that there's no water for their crops. So they can't, communities who are reliant on farm work, who cannot feed themselves already, right? We're already struggling, we're already there. And war, the US military is the biggest pollutant and the most dangerous when it comes to climate catastrophe. So we cannot talk about climate change and whatnot without addressing the United States military. And next time your org tells you to celebrate a particular budget or win or whatnot, look at it. How much is allocated for war, for militarism, for the killing of our siblings across the world? And so, as a note for any of the comms people, any of the folks on staff here.
All right. Thank you to our amazing panelists, M. Adams, Eva, and Salome. That's it. Oh, wait.
Okay,
You got
sorry.
something else?
I have 3 last tiny things.
All right.
Okay. So tiny, so small. They're important. Captive audience, right? I think we talked a lot about doom and gloom and the end of empire, and I think it can feel really inaccessible to people. And I don't want that for you, because we are not ending empire without each other. And so something so small that you can do is figuring out how you will divest from empire. And so many brilliant colleagues of mine and comrades of mine have started to talk about, like, one of the last things you have is your labor. How can you divest your labor from empire? I mean, like, even this space needs to be divested from empire. Do y'all know that the Loudermilks gave $2 million to Cop City? Did y'all know that? So that's one of the tiny things. The second tiny thing is, like, I feel like I really have to uplift this story. A mother in Sudan fleeing an incursion of the RSF on her village, once she got to safety, realized that the bundle that she was carrying that was supposed to have her baby was empty. She had dropped her baby as she fled. And all of these stories right now are coming out about Palestine, as they should. But our comrades in Sudan are experiencing similar stories, because I saw someone quote that tweet and say, my grandmother experienced the same thing during the Nakba. When we say end the Zionist entity, it is not just a call to free the people of Palestine, it's a call to free the people of the world. If Palestine has emboldened you, please turn to IET. Please turn to Kanaki. Please turn to West Papua. Please turn to all the different threads of empire. And the last thing is, listen, I know y'all liked my DJing. I saw you dancing. Please donate to Mariam's campaign. Okay, that's it.
All right, y'all. That's the end of our panel. Thanks for listening.